Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Phoenix Rising, Finding Your Life Calling with me, Tola Benny. I have a guest with me, someone that I consider a peer and a good friend already. I hope he also thinks the same, Simon Osamoh. And Simon is all the way in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, in the US. Simon, welcome. Please say hello before we carry on.
All right, Tola, thank you. An honor and a privilege to be here. I'm really excited for this conversation today. Thank you for the invitation.
Excellent. So, Simon, you and I are peers because you are also a podcaster, but I am always learning so much. I've learned so much from you already. I've been with you in Clubhouse rooms, and I know you do a lot of work helping other, budding podcasters to build their brands. And so I'm entirely grateful to you for the work that you do. But before we get to the whole podcasting scenario, I would like us to take it right back to your childhood, growing up as a mixed kid in the UK, because you grew up in the UK, even though you're now based in the US. So tell us about that. What was it like?
Yeah, so I'll start for your audio listeners, Tola, and say part of my journey is my mum met my dad in the 70s in England. And at that time, I was born in 1978, to give your listeners some context to my age. Some people are trying to work out how old I am.
I thought you were in your 30s, to be honest.
That's what I know, yes. I hide it very well. It's the black don't crack and the dark hair. So at that time for my mum, when she first met my dad, obviously a white woman falling in love with a black man wasn't necessarily maybe not the thing to do in England, but it was still a little bit frowned upon. It was still different in the 70s to have a mixed relationship. And my mum sort of moved to Nigeria in the early 70s with my dad. And I think the relationship wasn't what she expected. I think my dad wasn't the person she thought he was, wasn't the person that she thought he was. And my mum left Nigeria with me when she was around 8.5 months pregnant. So I think in today's world, fast forward to where we are now, most probably she wouldn't have been able to get on that plane and return back to England. So the reason why I provide that context, Tyler, is that I was born into a mixed race family, but I never and still to this day, I'm 43 now. I haven't, I believe my father died when I was maybe 4, 5 or 6. Never met my father and don't have much, have no connection with any of my African side of the family. So being raised and born, my mum went back to white middle class suburban, I'm actually sort of more working class. My granddad was a very hard-working man, and he was one of the first people to have a TV and a car, these type of things during his life. But we ended up back in church accommodation in a town west of London. So my experience around being mixed race is a little unique, because not only was I mixed race, but the man that gave me the colour, we had no connection with. So my mum was a white woman in the 70s. I've got two sisters, raising three young children as people of colour. So
that's very interesting. Okay, let's talk about a bit of your work in the UK before you came to the US. You were a detective and a terrorist expert. That's very interesting.
So my career was quite it started young. I wouldn't say that I fell into the police, Tola, but I joined the police when I was 19. So I think I applied when I was 18. I don't know what it's like in South Africa as to what age people generally join the police. But again, in the UK, it's a very strong profession, very, very highly skilled, very highly trained. And actually, most of my terrorism sort of knowledge came from when I came to the US. So I was the head of counterterrorism in one of the country's largest shopping malls, whereas in the UK, it was more organized crime. But I did work on the liquid bomb terrorism plot with a bit of security services in 2006, I believe it was. But yes, I mean, it was interesting. So I joined at 19. I think I was a detective by 23. In my sort of mid-20s, I started to do organised crime investigations, sort of all covert policing, sort of phone tap,
Sounds
listening
dangerous.
devices, survival. But well, it is. But here's what I would say about it: is you do need a certain type of aptitude for the work, Tola, for sure. Because I mean, have I been in dangerous situations as a police officer? Yes.
If you killed
Did they
anyone?
scare me? Sorry?
If you killed anyone, don't answer.
No. Nothing like that for sure. Yeah. But it's just, I think it's like, a top athlete. When you say to a top athlete, at the start of a race, you take someone like Usain Bolt and you say, at the start of a race, are you nervous? People like us might get nervous. You ask someone like Usain Bolt, he's changed those nerves into excitement. He will say, no, at the start of a race, I am excited, I'm not nervous. And I think working in law enforcement is the same, but people say, do you get scared? Are you fearful, intimidated? I would say no. I would say there's a thrill, there's a rush.
Wow.
There is an aptitude you have for that type of work where you can turn that fear into determination, or turn that fear into an ability to see the sort of bigger picture in life. So I was never, there's one time when I was in a situation where I thought this is going to go horribly wrong here. But most situations you're excited for the outcome to catch that bad guy. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. It sounds exciting. I can imagine. I wouldn't pick that career in the world. But
well,
yeah.
And so here's a funny thing. I can remember, I learned a lot of life lessons through the police. One, I think I was 19 when I went to a murder where a woman died in my arms, and that was quite a big shot. I think that was actually, no, I wasn't 19. I think I was 21 when this woman died. So the depth of responsibility is great that sort of comes with it. But then you also learn a bit of a sort of law enforcement and police mentality. Because I can remember I had a girlfriend when I was maybe 22, 23, and I was telling her about some things that we'd done. And I was telling her, that sort of, other people might say it's fearful. Most police, I would say this was exciting. This was thrilling. And I can remember I told her a couple of stories, and she looked at me to sort of say, Simon, are you mad? This is like, this is crazy.
The same way I'm looking at you.
Yeah, and it didn't turn her off me, but I could see that her opinion and view changed of me. And I can remember I said to a good friend of mine, John, at the time, I said, John, I just told my girlfriend this, and it didn't go down too well, and what's wrong with her? And John gave some good words of advice. He said, Simon, he said, you've got to remember this is our world. And you shouldn't really invite people into our world.
Yes.
You should give them a little peek behind the curtains, but don't invite them in. And what he's really saying there is that it is true. The world is a bad place, and what you can't give back once you've seen it. And I don't want to stereotype here, but you've been from South Africa. I'm sure you've seen a lot of bad things in your time.
Yeah.
That once you look behind the curtain, you can't look back. And so I was always very careful then. Yes, it can't be unseen. So I was always very careful from that point. I was maybe 22, 23, as to what I told people outside. And still to this day, depending on who the audience is, would depend on the story. But here's the interesting perception there as well, is so when we talk about, bias, or racism, prejudice, or identity, whatever it is I've definitely felt a bias towards me in a favorable way here in America, because of my English accent and being English. Yes. So even as an example, and this one I can call out because it's going back 10 years ago, when I applied for my green card to come to the US as an English person, I was sort of 14 years in the police at that time. When I went for my immigration interview at the US Embassy in London, you get presented, there's a big glass screen, you've got to handle your paperwork, then you go to a side room and you have a meeting with an immigration officer where they're asking you all these questions about what's your intention and this type of stuff to see if they're going to permit you a green card. Mine was very different because the guy said to me, "Where are you going again?" And I said, "I'm going to Minneapolis, Minnesota." He said, "Oh, do I know anyone that lives in Minneapolis that might be able to give you a job? You know, what skills have you got?"
Okay.
And so straight away, me
Wow.
being English was a very biased. And again, this is
Wow.
my bias of the system, but I consider if that was a Nigerian, an Indian person who didn't have very good English, you know, someone from Somalia, some of these others, you know,
Yeah.
would that person's attitude have been the same? As in,
Yeah.
do I know anyone that can help you? So I definitely saw favor then from
Yeah.
being English. And I think
Podcasting. How did you get into podcasting then?
yes, so podcasting interesting. So my podcast is called the Who I Became podcast. And there's a couple of reasons why I called it the Who I Became podcast is because I've always been fascinated, and I only learned this in later life, but I've always been fascinated with people's personal journeys. You know,
Yeah.
what makes us the people that we are. You know, me giving you a bit of a snapshot into my life as being a sort of a, you know, a person of color living in England and then living in America, time in the police, you know, now an entrepreneur and these other things. So I've always been fascinated as to, well, how do people get where they are? Because quite often what we do in life, Tola, is we always compare your life against mine. There's always this outward projection. Have I done enough? Am I successful? Have I reached the level that Tola has within a podcast? We always have this outward comparison. And it's generally only when we look at our skills, our gifts, our abilities, that we truly sort of create and understand our own greatness. Because the only greatest person that Simon, me, that I can ever be is the greatest version of myself.
Exactly.
And so what I wanted to do on my podcast really is to share that with someone, is to don't necessarily just judge the final result, but let's dive into people's life stories and journeys about how they got there. Because from my time in law enforcement, I've seen so much adversity, and I've also seen a lot of transformation and had a lot of transformation in my own life, have to reinvent myself, you know, become a new version of me. So we really focus on stories around sort of life, balance and mindset. And it's from a perspective of overcoming adversity, finding your purpose in life, or creating those positive mindsets. A lot of the things that I talk about are really because of my positive mindset. There's many things what the world might see me as, and some might even class me as a victim or a circumstance. I myself am not a victim, you know. So I like to share those stories with it. So I think it was always a natural progression. I think, you know, it just happened one day. I just had the idea thinking, you know, I'm now 48, 50 episodes into my podcast. And I just thought, okay, I'm just going to do it. And, you know, one of my biggest things is I'm a big call to action type person. I am an executor. And I started it, and I've been blessed. I've interviewed some criminologists in NASCAR, which is like the American version is like Formula One. There's 2 Black African Americans. I've interviewed a guy called Jesse Awuju to get his perspective about sort of, you know, what does white privilege mean when you're a successful Black entrepreneur? You know, he has a very interesting view on what privilege means. Again, for him, it's a mindset. You know, I've interviewed so many people who've had different adversities in their life. Like I said, there's a fantastic episode with a gentleman called Isaac Harvey, who was born with no arms and really short legs. And you know, just to come alongside his journey, one of the questions I asked him was, you know, what's the one thing that you'd want to do in your life? And Tola, I would imagine, again, this is my bias, if you said to someone that's born with no arms and his legs are around 6 inches long, you know, what's the one thing that you would want to do? My bias takes me to, Simon, I'd want to run. I'd want to be able to walk. You know, I'd want to be able to shake someone's hand, you know, to have that experience. And interestingly, what Isaac said to me was, I want a true and authentic relationship. You know, he would want a partner. And just being allowed to be involved in those moments and just hear the stories, it's very, very powerful for me.
Wow.
So there's a whole things that caused me to start that podcast. But yeah, I love podcasting. It's a great platform for encouragement and communication, and you just meet people all across the world, like me talking with you today.
And I mean, these amazing conversations that we have, podcasting has given us the platform to have these conversations, you know, that we would maybe just be having in our own sitting rooms or lounge, whatever you call it, you know, instead of having them across the Atlantic now as we are doing.
Yes.
But what I love about your podcast also is that it's very similar to mine in a slightly different way, but kind of similar, because mine is Phoenix Rising, because it's also about, you know, profiling people who have, you know, come across some kind of adversity in their lives and how they have risen from that to becoming who they are. So in a way, it's also about how I became the person that I am.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Your mindset is key, because it's often, you know, when I thought about should I, you know, 50 episodes in, should I rename my podcast? Do I go in a different direction?
Yes.
There's always some thoughts that come into your mind, but you know, here's one thing that I've learned from being very settled and comfortable from where I am now financially, from growing up in a single parent, you know, sure, but life is adversity. You know, that really is. It is not a walk in the park for anyone. You know, you even look at, as an example, you know, I think one of the things as a parent that we often struggle with, and I had this sort of revelation or realization a couple of days ago. I watched the new Space Jam film with I forget the name of LeBron James, a big American basketball player. He's in the new Space Jam film, and the tone of that, I don't want to spoil it for your listeners, but the tone of that is his young son, I'm feeling that he can't be him. He can't do him. You know, his dad is this big international basketball star, and his son's really interested in technology, and he wants him to be him. And I think we often have that type of thing in our life. And you look at the reason why I started with that sort of pretext. You then look at people like, you know, Prince Harry moving off to America. Well, I get it. You're born into royalty. But he also just wants to be him. You know, he's also feeling a little bit trapped in his identity. He can't be who he wants to be because society and his heritage is saying, you know, you are 7th or 8th or 9th to the throne, whatever he is. So you have to do this way. So no matter who you are, you know, people will look at Prince Harry and say, well, you've got everything. You've got money, you've got the lifestyle, doors get open for you. But even he is challenged in some way surrounding what is his purpose in life. So I think the quicker that you realize that life is adversity and what are you going to do to move forward, the easier your path becomes. And then once you focus on, like I said, you know, your strengths, your skills, your abilities, that's when you can find your own greatness. So it is, it ends up as being.
What I also love, so what you touched on earlier, is this whole thing, and I don't want us to, you know, not talk about it, is this whole thing of comparing yourself to other people, you know, which is such a self-limiting type of behavior. And it takes a while to actually get to a point in your life where you stop comparing yourself to other people. Because, I mean, we growing up together, you know, as kids in the same classroom, and, you know, we all go to university, or maybe some people fall on the wayside, whatever. But, you know, there's this, you know, generation that's growing up together, going to school, going to university, getting married, you know, buying homes and this and businesses and this and this. And so, you know, it's kind of, it takes a while to get yourself out of that mentality or mindset of, you know, not trying to compare yourself to other people. So I often say,
and if I could, and if I could just come back on that, because I think that one of the crucial pieces that we have right now is in life, we're almost being conditioned to be like someone else, you know, celebrities, you know, everything is being conditioned to be like them. You know, we want to be them, we want to idolize them, but there's two things about comparison. Comparison has to be admired as an action to drive your own skills and abilities forward. That is the best thing you have to do with comparison, because we are being conditioned to be like someone else. But here's the problem: when you get like someone else, you then just blend into the background. You know, most people get to their level because of their uniqueness and individuality. So, you know, once you, the best way you can do that is stop trying to be someone else and be the best version of you, because you can only be you. You know, you can't be someone else.
And all you have to do is try and be the better version of yourself. So I often say, you know, I'm not in competition with anybody but myself. I'm just trying to be better than I was last week.
Yes, it really is. Yeah. Or yesterday, or 30 minutes ago. Yeah.
So yesterday I was bench pressing so many kgs. Today I'm trying to add more, you know, because I'm trying to be better than I was yesterday, or mentally, or whatever, you know, aspect of life. So I like that. So let's talk about before we talk about that, any lessons you've learned from podcasting, or anything that you wish to share? And I know this will help others, you know, build their podcasts from zero to, you know, building.
Yeah, and actually, I'm just starting to release. So people go to my website. If you please put it in the show notes, but it's just my full name, Osamoh.com.
Okay.
And on there, if you go to my podcast page, I've actually just recorded, Tola, around 6 or 7 different videos about basic podcasting that are going to go on my YouTube. So people can look at my website, SimonOsmo.com. If you just put the spelling of my last name in there for people to find.
Yeah.
But I think the basic thing about podcasting, I'd always say is the biggest tip I can have is, what is your why? You know, why is it that you want to do it?
Yeah.
And make sure that you're passionate about it. You know, me and you just having this conversation. This is, you know, it's 7 o'clock in the morning here from in the US. Not too sure what time it is in Africa. You know, I woke up at like
2 p.m.
5:30 in the morning. I woke up at like 5:30 in the morning, but I'm passionate about this. I love doing this, you know. So find the subject that you're most passionate about, because here's one thing is, whether you believe in higher power, the universe, creator, whatever it is, that will find you out if you're not passionate. So always pick on a sub. Don't pick on what's going to make me the most money.
Yes.
You know, what's going to get me the most views.
Simon. I love
it is. Pick what you're passionate about.
Yeah. One of the best advice I ever received from another person was to say, what is the one thing that you can talk about for days and you will not get tired of talking about it? That's your passion. So So
and it is, because so the second question I'll just quickly answer is the question I get a lot of in Clubhouse rooms and just in general is, okay, well, how do you do this? Because I want to monetize. And here's what I would sort of say is, again, you know, what do you feel passionate about? Yeah. And the monetization will come, because here's what's happened, Tola. Through me sharing my journey, my successes, my failures, and who I am, people will often say, again, there's an outward comparison from them. They'll say, Simon, how do I get where you are? How do you get this positive mindset? How do you overcome? You know, how do you become a successful entrepreneur business? You know, the value is me, my life skills, my experiences. So when I look at monetizing, I just say to people, well, if you'd like me to coach you or help you, you know, I will do that. You know, and sadly, in today's world, you've got to pay for access. You know, you have to pay for access for my skills, my experiences, and my intellectual property. So monetization comes just from me being authentic, and people hearing my journey and story, they're gravitating towards me and saying, can you coach me to do some of the things that you've done? So, and again, that just comes from picking the right subject and just being me. So
I love that. And I shared with I interviewed Sean Anthony a week ago, and you know, the question of monetization English.
Yes. Yeah.
There's my Zulu coming out. Anyway, the question of monetization came up, and we were talking about that as well. And for me, when I started podcasting, honestly, I was just talking about my journey. I was living under lockdown. I was frustrated. I needed someone to talk to. I picked up my phone and I started recording myself, talking about living under lockdown and what I'm going through and whatever. So it was never with the intention that I want to make money. I didn't even know you could make money from podcasting. But for me, it was more about, you know, the why. You were saying, find your why. I just want to talk about this, and I just want to encourage someone out there. And if I get positive feedback from one person and they say, I listened to this episode and I so resonated with it, and I'm you know, I've become as happy as a kid in a candy shop, because it's like, okay, one person got it, then, you know, I'm happy. It's not about the money, but the money will find you, you know, as you correctly pointed out, the money will find you. And I was sharing with Sean that, you know, I recently was able to get a sponsorship, and I was not even like out there looking hard for money but it's nice to know that someone is out there listening and saying, hey, I don't mind giving her some money to do what she does because, you know, someone loves what I'm doing. It's nice to be paid to do what you love doing. So, you know, money finds you along the way, but you shouldn't start, you know, off with the mindset that I want to make money out of this, or I want to become famous. I don't, you know, I think that's the wrong way of going about it. But anyway, we are coming to 40 minutes now, Simon. Any other businesses that, you know, business ventures that you are involved in? I know you are an entrepreneur, so tell us about that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things. So I mean, I use my, and it might be applicable to South Africa. I'd love for some people in South Africa to look at my stuff and let me know what they feel. But because of my safety background in law enforcement and in charge of counterterrorism, one of the country's largest sort of retail entertainment complexes, I've got a couple of books out there. You know, I'm a man of faith. So one is around suspicious behavior, how to identify and interrupt it. And then the second one is 7 steps that I believe every church needs to take to stay safe. So securing church operations, again, they're on my website, or if you type my name into Amazon, they come up. So heavy focused on safety and security. I have a passion for helping people to stay safe. I'm just in the, you know, I do coach men that have gone through similar adversity from me on their entrepreneurial journeys. I'm sort of developing out a course, which the working name right now is called Empowerment to Action. So, you know, I coach people, but my program doesn't really have a sort of true identity, but I'm looking to sort of create a more defined course that anyone could take. And I think that's going to be working name Empowerment to Action. So hopefully no one steals that from me right now, because that's what a lot of it is. It's seeking that empowerment to action to gain ultimately your fulfillment in life. You know, what is it that makes you happy? So, you know, I coach men entrepreneurs to be successful, and there's other things that I do as well. You know, public speaking, and I do a lot of my mindset type coaching. So again, I'd encourage people to look at my YouTube channel, which is just my name again, just Simon Osamoh in YouTube, where you can see all my podcast episodes are video recorded. I just put the full episodes out there for people to look at, and there's also some videos on there around mindset. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I do to help people. That is my passion. Busy guy.
That's why you were telling me earlier that your day starts early. So I mean, you need to.
It does, yeah. And when there's a couple of things that people often say, you know, what does it take to be successful? Dedication, hard work, and consistency. And you know, I'm no different than anyone else. I can only be me, but my day does start at 4:30 in the morning. You know, and that's what it takes to do it. And people say, well, don't you need to sleep? Well, you know, I don't sleep too much.
Who needs to sleep? You sleep when you're dead.
Exactly. And again, that is a mindset as well. You know, I mean, I think it was the infamous, the legend, John Lennon said that life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And that is very true. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, you know. So I think there's a mindset of not putting off till tomorrow what can be done today. Yeah. And taking those baby steps, you know, to learn something. It's doing a small thing every day, but those different building blocks, you know, really setting targets. Yeah. We could talk. There's another podcast in this, Tola.
I think so. I totally agree. There's another podcast to this. We should talk about being productive and all of those things. And, you know, we have so many things to talk about. So anyway, let's bring this one to a close. Anything else? This is an open question where anything goes.
Tola, I just say for your perspective, it's been an honor and a privilege to be invited to come on your show. I'm really excited as to what you're doing, how you're empowering people, and I love you know, the fact you're in South Africa doing this as well. You know, there's a lot of poverty in your country. But what I would say to people is, you know, life is about a mindset. One of the things that I've never lost sight of, you know, and I live in very well-to-do middle-class America, you know, cars, I've got an expensive road bike and all these things, but I've never lost sight of the fact that when my mum moved to Nigeria in the 70s, my father's parents were living in a mud hut. And so I often say, well, how can this descendant of someone living in a mud hut now be living in, you know, very expensive America with expensive cars, possessions, and all the things that outwardly the world sees me as successful. So I'm sure some people that are your listeners in South Africa might be challenging themselves, but I would say it is a mindset and it's building blocks. You know, look at, never focus as to what other people have. Find your skills, your gifts and abilities, you know, and use those as best you can, and strive, and you'll find your own greatness, whatever it shall be, because the only greatest person you can be is the greatest version of yourself. And don't let the world tell you that it's all about wealth and money. Some of the poorest people in the world are some of the wealthiest people in the world.
And poverty is a mindset. It's a hard truth to learn, but it is true. So you can be anything you want, and you just need to change your mindset. And I like what you're saying, be your own self. It's all about authenticity. You know, we spoke about this with Sean last week as well. You have to be authentic. You know, you have to find your own voice, because we all have it, and not try to be someone else. And of course, learn from people who are ahead of you, but don't try to copy. Just be yourself, and your tribe will find you.
That is true. That is true.
And those blessings do come, you know, eventually. They find you too. So thank you so much, Simon.
Yeah, and the only last quick thing I'd say is yeah, if any of your listeners take a listen to some of my podcasts, I'd love to get a South African perspective of some of my episodes. So please go on iTunes or wherever you guys listen on The Who Became, take a listen and send me some messages. I'd love to get a different perspective from those around the world from some of the things I talk about.
And Simon's podcast is called Who I Became. I'm now saying it with an African accent, because sometimes your accent, sometimes people might not pick it up. But of course, it will be on the show notes as well. But yeah, Simon's podcast is called Who I Became. So find it on your favorite platform. Simon, it's been such an honor. I am so honored. I'm so grateful to you. I'm learning so much from you. And please don't get tired of me with all the questions that I sometimes send you.
Well, no, what I would love as well, and I'm going to save this on the recorded line. Hopefully you won't edit this out. I'd love to formally invite you on my podcast. So we'll get that done. I know you're going to come on sometime.
It'll be such an honor. Like, absolutely. I would love to do so. So yeah, we can talk about that outside of this platform. You know, you can DM me and all of that. But yes, to wishing you an awesome day, and your day is still at the beginning. And sending much love to you and your sons and your wife, the whole family, and blessings. Thank you.